Good to be with you, Eric. Thank you for making your way over.
Thanks, Stuart. It was a pleasure.
How is life? All in all.
All in all,
I know you don't want to say just good or bad or the typical Aussie not too bad. How could
yeah,
you sum it all up?
yeah, I'd say trending positively.
Good.
hmm
And life in Australia, how long has it been now?
I got here January 20th, 2 years ago. So just past the 2-year mark.
Wow.
hmm
Yeah, we've got a lot of commonalities there. We both fell in love with Joe via Yoga Club.
Yes, we did. And how could you not?
I found out she was from Perth,
Mhm.
and the rest is history.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did.
Here we are.
We first met in India,
hmm
that retreat, and before we knew it, you moved here.
Yeah.
So big shout out to Jared and Haley,
hmm
because they pretty much were the impetus for bringing you over here. Is that right?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. Jared was on the retreat, and Haley was back here in Perth about to have a baby. And they eventually did have the baby, but we stayed in touch. And she owns a yoga studio, Beyond Being. And Jared just said wonderful things about me and talked me up and about how great the experience was. And they offered me a job. And I was only going to be here for 3 months, and 3 turned into 6. I fell in love, and here I am 2 years later, on my way to becoming a resident in Australia.
Ah, exciting.
Yeah.
Well, Perth loves you too. I'm hearing just positive feedback about your classes and just about you. It's all been really beautiful. How has your experience been in Perth on the whole? Negatives, positives? How's it been?
I almost remember it as when I first got here, a type of limbic whiplash, because coming from Washington, D.C., which is a city that runs on caffeine and booze, and it's a city where if you're at a stoplight and the light turns green, it's not even half a second before the person behind you beeps.
Ah, right.
Yeah. And people don't even use indicators. They just zip around.
Because I find that here, the traffic light thing you just said, the impatience, and before you know it, road rage, just frustration, road rage. I find that here.
Oh, it was the opposite for me. I thought people were just taking their sweet time,
Okay.
like they were driving horse and buggies practically. Like it felt extremely provincial compared to what I was used to. So I found myself being the impatient one for the first few weeks.
Well, there's definitely the speed thing, like with our speed cameras, just left, right, and center. I think that is one of the reasons why there's such slow, shitty driving here.
Yeah.
I think that's worked in good ways. It's worked in positives, but I see more negatives with this speed camera thing. I mean, it seems like driving's getting worse. Possibly the reason is people are looking at their speedometer half the time and then their phone the other half of the time. And it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I haven't paid attention to a trend, but you'd have more data than me.
Probably.
But also even just the way the hours of shops and grocery stores and things,
Right.
you know, that was something I had to learn about, and was very frustrated I didn't have 24 access to everything.
Yeah.
But it was good in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it just compelled me to be slower, which I didn't have an intention of like what I was looking for when I traveled or when I picked up everything and came here with 2 suitcases. But I knew I wanted to shift something inside of me. So it's just open to that lesson. And that was one of the lessons that was there, was slow down.
And once you slowed down, you found a nice groove here?
I have.
Mm-hmm.
I have. Yeah. I mean, it's just beautiful. You can go to the beach all the time and you can look in either direction and there's just space.
Yeah.
So much space.
Yeah, we are blessed in that way. We're very lucky.
Mm.
Yeah, got a beautiful coastline, lots of space. The air feels fresh. Even like, yeah, the sky looks more open than many places in the world. I mean, it could be because it's quite flat compared to a lot of places in the world, but it does feel like a spaciousness on the coastline, in the sky, the feeling of the air.
Yeah.
And
it's early. It's an early city.
Yeah, true.
People are out and about. You know, in DC, for example, 6 a.m. classes nobody goes to, and here they're packed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just an earlier city, and I think people are going home hopefully and enjoying quality time with themselves and their loved ones. Can't say for sure. I'm not in their homes, but I think that's where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We wanted to focus quite a bit on the kind of, it seems like a necessity for more support for yoga teachers. But before we dive into that, for people that don't know you, and for me to get to know you a bit more, I'd love to hear your journey leading up to now.
All right.
Sum it up. Your time in the US, where you were brought up.
Yeah.
For people to get to know you on a personal level a bit more.
Sure.
Feel free to get as candid and honest or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm always reflecting on this question, and the answer always changes. But I grew up in a small town in Texas called Far, which really was far from a whole lot of things. And my whole
How's
journey.
that spelled? F-A-R.
Pharr.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And my whole journey has just been about like getting further and further away. And I think that's just part of a bigger exploration that I'm experiencing. But eventually that took me to DC. And growing up in kind of definitely a town with conservative undertones, growing up gay, growing up not athletic, and a community where being athletic is like revered, is almost godlike. Think Friday Night Lights. I was always trying to prove myself in some way, to essentially make up for being gay. Yeah, so I had to go to like the fanciest school I could go to for grad school and try and get like the most prestigious job to find some kind of self-worth or affirmation for myself, right? And so I just kept going and going and going and pursuing this. And thank God I found yoga while I was kind of going down the rabbit hole of seeking outside of myself. But eventually I found my body just turning on itself, in terms of like injuries, not related to yoga, but just my nervous system being shot and like injuries from just running so hard, like smashing it out, like still trying to like be the best and compete with myself. Psoriasis, my hair falling out. And yeah, yoga started to fill me up. And it was probably the first place that I really start to felt internally affirmed. And I didn't feel the need to get validation from outside of myself. Yeah. So eventually I left all that behind, became a yoga teacher really quickly, I think full time within 6 months of finishing my yoga teacher training. And it was, the community received me really, really well. I expected to be schlepping all over town, going up and down the train line, and teaching a million classes at odd hours and just being brutally exhausted. But it wasn't the case. I was able to get great time slots and stack things together. And yeah, I felt really received. Yeah. And that brought me to Perth.
Beautiful.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for sharing. And what a gift the practice is. I mean, it just keeps affirming that this commonality of people feeling inadequate, whether they're growing up in a very conservative town and they're homosexual, or, I mean, it seems more prevalent than not for one to feel inadequate, even if it seems like they've got all their shit together. That our society kind of feeds that. Both Australia and the US kind of feeds that feeling of inadequacy. Like we get rewarded when we do good in the typical like schooling system, for example. And yeah, if you're not athletic, not smart, there's not much room for feeling adequate for society and worthy for thriving and feeling fulfilled and abundant and happy. But even those that are on top of their game, even that quite often leads to a collapse. For example, like an elite athlete, a really top athlete that is identifying with their prowess at that sport, for example, and then maybe something changes, an injury or an illness, or the team doesn't get them, doesn't hire them, they don't get the contract, blah.
Yeah, it's like,
And
shit, who am I now?
yeah, and it happens again and again, whether it be that example or someone that's really on the fringe and not being accepted by their community, by their culture, or just the identity crisis of, say, a mother who's identified with being a mother and then all of a sudden their kids are moved out and gone. I mean, it can be anyone and anything. Suffering is suffering, and the relativity of that seems to almost be irrelevant. Like, it is relevant, but suffering is suffering, and it can be any context. And thank goodness for a yoga practice where we can go beyond our roles and our kind of labels that society tends to put us into, and we do as well with our own mind, but it's definitely a societal trait, and get in touch with our soul and like who we truly are beyond our gender identity, beyond our preference in relationship or whatever, our job. Even that, like, it's common. I've met plenty of yoga teachers that take a while to become comfortable with being a yoga teacher and feeling really inadequate with calling themselves a yoga teacher, and they'll lie when people ask, what do you do?
Really?
Yeah. It's a common...
Are they afraid of judgment? Like, what is the...
Yeah. So kind of possibly similar to the inadequacy you were experiencing in Washington, and just working hard to get a job of prestige, and similar to that. Like, for many, the yoga teacher title isn't a job of prestige. So if one has that in their perception, yeah, it could be really uncomfortable when someone asks in a social situation, what do you do?
Yeah, well, if you, I mean, prestige doesn't even matter at the end of the day, but I'm just kind of thinking in social constructs that for me to leave from, creeping up on six figures to a yoga teacher, that people projected onto me, that is so courageous of you. You're incredible. I really admire you. But also, I think too, had someone come more directly to the path of being a yoga teacher and not walked away from six figures or whatever, then I think, even though the outcome is the same, yoga teacher, I would think I would sense more judgment on that individual.
Right. Yeah, I've never personally experienced it when I'm in those social situations and, around lawyers and bankers and these apparent jobs of higher, I don't know, prestige, again, the word. I've actually personally never felt uncomfortable in saying, yeah, I'm a yoga teacher.
I kind of love it sometimes. I love it and hate saying it. I love it when it just totally throws someone off.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and they're just like, what, how do I respond to that? And they're really uncomfortable because they can't use their conventional networking skills with you.
Right.
So I do take a little delight in that.
I also delight in playing with the answer when someone asks the typical question of what do you do? Like, well, I do a lot of things. Like, what do? I do gardening, and I do this, and I do some art, and I do podcasts, and I do do a lot of things. And just kind of fuck with them on that answer, because it is such a default question in a lot of society, in our kind of environmental social networks. That automatic question of small talk, what do you do? Yeah. And then quite quickly, there's a whole perceptual box that someone puts you in kind of labeling you. So I like to play with that as well and have a little giggle.
Yeah. But we really do, it's human nature. We're always collecting information on each other, whether we know it or not. Usually it's unconscious. So shoes, for example, shoes are a big way people gather information about your class.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, if you look at the history of tennis shoes and
Well, I'm probably 99% of the time either barefoot or in flip-flops. What would that say for...
I would say you're a yoga teacher. And you live in Fremantle.
True. Yeah. Now, I agree that yoga teachers need more support, and I'm all up for yoga teachers rallying together to support each other more. I'm glad you brought that up before as being a focus that we could bring attention to. And I think that'll also segue into, it seems like everyone is yearning for more support now.
Amen.
Yeah, like in this world, it's a reoccurring conversation in whatever scene one happens to be in, but this social media thing in which we're so quickly interconnected with anyone and everyone. We've never been so connected on so many levels. Yet so many people are feeling like chronically unsupported, like mothers, fathers, like this stat keeps coming up in my face of apparently the highest suicide rate in a group of people is men in their 50s. So, and apparently it's you're not homosexuals, not transsexuals, like none of that, just your kind of quote unquote typical working class man.
Yep.
That it's driving them mad, and possibly they're yearning for support as well. And yeah, it does feel like everyone is yearning for more support, and this interesting paradigm we're in of being in our cars and our four walls and then driving to our work and then being on our phones is creating this kind of epidemic of not feeling supported. Plus, we're so mobile. Like, it's so new for us to break away from our tribe, so to speak. Like, for so long, we just we're born into our village. We're in that tight knit, and I think it could be confusing on our circuitry to be able to get on a plane and go the other side of the world, and it's beautiful. I love it.
Confusing, but expansive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then where's my support? Like, where's my tribe? Where's my community? So yeah, let's first dive into the potentials for us yoga teachers supporting each other. I'm enjoying these conversations with different yoga teachers from different styles and different perspectives, and enjoying kind of wrestling with different perspectives, and kind of that feels to me like one way of connecting and supporting one another, even if we've got different styles, different beliefs, different perspectives, and finding that commonality and coming together. Because there is an experience of like, okay, that's your school, this is my school, and it's almost like team against team. I think that is...
Well, that's even that information collecting again.
Right.
Like, what style do you teach?
Yes.
Where did you study? Who's your teacher? And you're like picking together information to create some kind of profile of someone, which is essentially, the whole social media thing as well. There we go. Where I think with social media, there was, and people aren't saying that anymore finally, but this illusion of connectivity, but really all you're getting is data points on another person. And even then they're skewed data points, so they're not completely accurate. But what's missing, or yes, like the pitfalls, okay, sure, we don't know about the sad stuff going on in their life, but there is this feeling that's so important of being witnessed by someone. Right. And I think that when you're doing your podcast, you're witnessing the other person. And that is a form of spiritual awakening, a connectivity. I think there's a saying in Buddhism that one of the kindest, most loving things that you can do for someone is to see them and to witness them. And I might actually go way back, way back to before the agricultural revolution, because you mentioned the idea of the village and this fleeting feeling of connectivity. I recently learned that in some hunter-gatherer, like kind of paleo communities, there was no kind of recognition of the father. So the word for father and man or adult male were the same. Right? So it was not necessarily like, this is my offspring. Really, the only lineage you knew was through the mother. So then everyone in that group had the responsibility and the honor and privilege of taking care of everybody else. So even now in modern times, when we grow up, if we're lucky enough to have loving parents, we'll eventually lose them. And then we lose that connection. Whereas in that other model, even if you lose your biological parents, you've still got all your fathers and all your mothers and all your brothers and all your sisters, right? And that goes way beyond data points.
Yeah.
That is a feeling of knowing that you belong. That is a feeling of continuously being witnessed and witnessing other people.
Yeah. Thank you for going there. And that reminds me of the feeling I get when I'm in places like India and I walk into a tiny home and it is a whole family, and you can see the extended family, the grandmother, the great-grandmother, the whole family, and who knows else, like the cousins. Everyone is in this tiny room.
Mm-hmm.
What would seem to us like poverty and would probably be put into that poverty bracket, yet the smiles on their face and the contentment that I feel, and possibly also the belief system that is intertwined into those cultures about death as well. There's a kind of peacefulness and a lack of grasping to and denial of the death process, possibly a combination of that deep connectivity beyond just a loving father and mother, if one is lucky, like you said. But yeah, that village connection in the one space, which is so rare now, super rare. And yeah, thank you for touching upon that, and then bring it forward.
Yeah. Well, so and this kind of goes into the psyche of yoga teachers, and I'm seeing this more and more because I've coached and mentored a handful of teachers, and I've witnessed it in myself. That was where I first saw it. But for those who become yoga teachers, there is definitely a lot of typically common personality traits. Like, it's the very empathetic person who's skillful at holding space, skillful at seeing and witnessing other people. It's just in their heart. It's almost in their DNA. It's in their experience. But the shadow side of that is it is a way to keep from being seen yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, well put. Interesting.
Yeah. So you can go, or I can go and teach a beautiful class, and I can see my students and they're in a vulnerable place, and I can, tell them what stories I want to tell them and share what I want to share with them. But, ultimately I'm running the show, and there's, I can adjust the tap or the dial of how much vulnerability of myself I want to show. Right. And then everyone goes home and hopefully they feel better and lighter because they've been seen and they've been witnessed. But then at the end of the day, the yoga teacher, if they don't have a way to themselves be seen, to then fill up their own cup, we have this burnout that like we all know about. And if you kind of layer that emotional burnout onto like financial burnout of sometimes having to teach a bajillion classes a week, it is just, you're just like racing to bottoming out on it. Right. So kind of my idea, and something that I see different in Perth and different in DC, is just even the little moments when yoga teachers can witness and connect with each other. So most studios I've seen in Perth, this has to do with architecture, are just one room. Right, you've got like maybe the reception or lobby, and then they go into the studio. But because of that, it's very rare that two teachers from the same studio will be in the same place at the same time. Where other places, there've been multiple practice rooms, and so the teachers will see each other before class, after class, during changeover, go grab a tea afterwards, and they can witness each other, and they have the same vocabulary. It's just this ultimate, very quick communication. I know who you are. I understand your experience. I feel the same things that you feel. I don't need to explain myself to you. And that is tremendously comforting.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't think that just because we have these studios in Perth with one room that we should give up on that.
Okay.
Right? If anything, it's a call to awakening. Like, what can we do to get more of that? How can we create more of that?
Yeah, it's a beautiful idea, and you should do it. A meetup group. I mean, again, coming back to other groups of people, like there are mothers groups, they feel that same yearning to relate to another in a similar situation, in the same situation. They meet up.
Yeah.
It's highly therapeutic. There are all these men's groups popping up for men to feel, again, seen and heard and felt. And it's highly therapeutic for just, to be around people of the same life situation, same roles. It's highly therapeutic. So I couldn't agree more. And it could be super simple. We just got to make time for it.
Yeah, or incentivize. I mean, definitely make time, but you can, organize it around something. Usually with yoga teachers, it's like tea or kombucha, but I mean, maybe it's a walk or a run, or it could be a knitting group or a crafting group. Who knows? Yeah.
Sangha is one of the more important parts of sadhana, of a yoga practice community. And I couldn't agree more. This common situation of the teacher burning out, and I've had it myself, that need to earn a certain amount of money and just grinding, teaching way too much, losing my voice, falling into adrenal fatigue. And even that is a situation that could do with some refinement. And I'm not sure how. I think Joe and I often talk about it like we start to identify with being a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
And possibly that isn't paying the bills. Teaching a certain amount of classes per day isn't sustainable for very long anyway. And often there might be a requirement to work a different job or just a different avenue. And often there's a feeling of embarrassment or shame even to go into a different line of work, which might not be that relevant, but it could. I think some people could relate to that predicament of like, I know several people that just are kind of sick of teaching yoga, but it's become their day job and they need to teach so much.
They feel trapped.
Yeah. They feel trapped. And I don't see any issue with working a different job, and then teaching, just bringing down the teaching a little bit. I think that is probably quite vital for some people, that because the minimum wage can be quite low for teaching yoga, especially when you consider the prep time and then the pack down time and talking before and after. Like, it takes a while getting to the studio, and it's not like especially in Perth, where you can line up consecutive classes and kind of do it all in a half day. It can take up your whole day. So even that, softening the identity.
That seems like the dream to me.
Yeah.
Because you can have so many passions and loves in your life.
Yeah.
Like maybe healing the sick is something great for you, and you're a paramedic and you drive around in an ambulance on the weekends.
Yeah.
And then the 2 yoga classes that you do teach, you can put your whole heart and soul into, and you've got less on the line. You don't have to worry about getting high attendance or pleasing people. You can just teach whatever you want to teach and say whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any issue in that at all. But again, I think that identity thing, I'm a yoga teacher now. This is what I do. This is who I am. This is it. So even just relaxing beyond that, because that seems to be a sure recipe for burnout, even just that.
Yeah.
So no, like it's one of my roles, but it's not who I am. I think that could help as well, in that taking the pressure off a little and feeling seen, feeling heard. Because it can be quite paradoxically like a lonely journey. If speaking to that situation you brought up, where you're running the show, you rock up, you teach, you can control it to a certain level, and then hop in your car or whatever, you go to the next class. It can feel quite lonely. Can feel quite lonely.
Yeah.
So I like to even go beyond the yoga sadhana, the sangha, and connect to just anyone, and enjoy just finding the kind of yoga in anything and anyone.
Absolutely. But I think I won't even say but, I'll say and um one of my pet peeves, I think it's a good start. But
Yeah.
Australia has this whole "Are you okay?" movement. Have you heard of this?
I don't
Are
know
you
if I
okay
have. Keep
day?
going.
Everyone, it happens like
Oh, is
once a
that
year.
like?
Once a year, people put it on Facebook and they say, "Ask someone, are you okay?" Because you
Okay.
never know what anyone's going through.
Mhm.
And I mean, honestly, when you ask most people, "Are you okay?" Unless they're on fire, the answer is, "Yeah, I'm fine."
I'm good.
Yeah, and then that's the end of the conversation.
Right.
And I think a more appropriate question is, "How are you?" And you still, usually people are trying to say, "I'm good, thanks. How are you?" Right? Just bounce it right back like you're playing a game of tennis. But that is missing for everyone in this world. I think we need more of that
Mhm.
idea of holding space. But I think yoga teachers can offer that to each other. How are you? Right? And then don't necessarily be satisfied with that return volley answer, "I'm good. How are you?" Like, what are you going through? What's happening in your life right now? What's exciting to you? What's challenging you? Um,
Yeah.
and the answers don't really matter. Again, it's just the idea of being asked,
Mhm.
right? It's like when you um, give a homeless person on the street a little bit of money. I mean, the money is valuable, but what also has value is the eye contact and stopping and witnessing someone and looking into their eyes when you do that and having that soul connection. And that's hard to do between a teacher and a student necessarily. I think usually the role is the teacher sees the student,
Mhm.
but who's seeing the teacher?
Well, of course, especially if there is that exchange of money, they're paying
Hmm.
you for a particular service, they're paying for you to have your shit together,
Hmm.
and yeah, that's quite understandable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the other part of that
Mm.
is, and I could keep going
Keep
because this is
going.
such a issue
Yeah.
to me, is the concept of giving advice. Like, I don't think advice should be given unless it's asked for. So if someone were to ask, yoga teacher to yoga teacher, person to person, what's going on? What's got you down, or whatever is going on, and they start to give their answer, like, "I'm burnt out," or "My mom is sick," or "had a fight with my boyfriend," whatever it is. Um, the other person is so quick to give advice.
Mhm.
Here's what you should do. Have you thought about trying this? Maybe you should do this, right? And it could be wonderful, beautiful, beautiful advice, um, but it's not always necessary. I think
Yeah.
we all know. I mean, the whole practice of yoga is just like, we know the answer already. It's in here. Just sit with it.
I think it's a knee-jerk response
Mm.
a lot of the time, the
Yeah,
giving of advice,
yeah.
that because it can be even more powerful just to be silent
Mm.
and just listen
Hmm.
and acknowledge. And I think that silent gap, that intimacy and just like true compassion
Mm.
is so intimate with the moment and with that person. I think it's a kind of societal knee-jerk reaction to project and give instant advice. And I agree, it ticks me off as well. But I think I can see where it comes from, and it
Hmm.
doesn't bother me as much anymore. Like it used to bother me a lot, and
Yeah.
it probably still would if it's too critical,
Yeah.
too criticizing. Because sometimes constructive criticism is great.
Mm.
It's great, but I think there's a time and a place for it.
Yeah.
And if it's that kind of, how you doing,
Mm.
and like connecting, and then the projecting of critical advice, advice that is criticizing, uh, yeah,
Well, it
it
could
does.
even be like positive, like loving advice,
Hmm.
but just maybe not what they need in that moment. Maybe
Right.
that could happen at the end of the
Yeah.
conversation rather than the beginning of the
Hmm.
conversation. And I think you know, I might be speculating here, but it's possible that you're getting a lot of the love and witnessing in your home and from your community. So when, you know, the odd person gives you advice, you're just kind of shrug and be like, all right, here we go again. It's all good. Yeah.
No, I totally hear you though. I totally hear you. Which brings me to like the art of communication, the yoga of relationship. I mean, that's a whole thing in itself.
Boom. Yes.
And paying attention deeply to that person. I mean, that's kind of what we're getting to, like being really present in that moment while paying attention to that person. And it's a practice. And we're in I know it's slower in Perth, but the attention span is still very short. And it's super intimate. Even now, just talking right to you, gazing into your eyes, it's so intimate.
Yeah.
It's so deep. And that can be uncomfortable for people. And it's kind of easier to just project.
Right, as a way to fill the silence.
To fill the silence.
To create some space.
Rather than really feeling how that person is. It's a deep yoga practice. So I agree, getting together with fellow yoga teachers and having a space like that where we can really get vulnerable and really be authentic.
Say, hey guys, I am burned out.
Yeah.
I have nothing left to give. And not necessarily receive advice on that. Maybe later receive advice on it, but just first say, gosh, I'm sorry. You know, I was having a whinge the other day about teaching, I think 13 or 15 classes in a week. And I was saying it to a person who taught 22 classes in a week. And I was just like, whoa, that is incredible. That is incredible. Yeah. And I just thought, oh, maybe she's just in her 20s, but I think she's actually older than me. Yeah. Yeah. But back to kind of the yoga of relationships and witnessing, right? Eye contact. And if you've ever taken my class and people kind of tease me about this, I do have one thing I always say at the beginning of a class, which is, please say hello to the yogis around you, offer your name and an optional smile. And I know that made some people here in Perth really, really uncomfortable at first. And I had students tell me that. They said it felt really weird and awkward, but it was good. I'm glad that you're doing it. It's important. Yeah. But even now I'm noticing in that studio where people thought it was weird, now they're just kind of performing, like dismissing it in a way. Like I think pretty soon I'm going to say, no, like really look at them. Make sure they hear your name and try to remember it. Try to remember their name. Because like, even on the student level, they're showing up to the same place, sometimes 7 days a week. And how much do they know about each other?
Right. Yeah. And the amount of times I hear from people yearning to find their people, to find community, find like-minded, like-hearted people, that's a great way.
Yeah, they're right there.
They're right there.
Yeah, she's more than like having a really awesome side crow. Yeah, which is kind of the information, again, data points that we gather on people. Like, oh, that's the chick with the short hair and really strong arms, right? Or that's the person who always wears the same leggings, you know, like whatever we observe about the other students. Yeah. Do you remember before you were a teacher and kind of
I do.
The stories you'd have about people? Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And again, I think we've got quite a bit of work to do there in Perth. You're right, it is quite unique to Perth. I do recall observing when I'm in LA, there's a very rich community feel of people catching up before and after, and same in a lot of places I visit, even if they are a similar format like the studio, just the four-wall studio type thing we see a lot of here. Yeah, that's what I like that you're doing that. I might take note and bring it into my...
Go for it, yes.
Yeah.
Spread the love.
I'll give you credit.
You don't need to.
But yeah, I'm all for that. Like the eye gazing as well. People get huge. That's often the peak of a class. Like that, like 10 to 20 minute eye gazing. And then people have a laugh and a giggle and a chat after. And that often is way more potent than all the intentionalized exercises of yoga. That eye gazing, because I mean, I work with some couples, and before we do that, the eye gazing, before I get them to do that, they'll often admit they've never gazed into their partner's eyes for longer than, like, sometimes a few seconds, and they're like, fuck, the last time we did that was when we got married, or the last time we did that was when we, like, first made love.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a common...
Wow.
It often takes people's breath away.
Mm.
It can be quite shocking how little we do that in our culture.
That kind of makes me wonder what they're doing when they're making love, because humans are the only animals that make eye contact when they're making love.
Right.
And yeah, I think so. I heard this recently as well, and it's related. For every 1,000 times that humans have sex, it results in offspring, which suggests that it is maybe recreational on some level, but also serves a higher function of connectivity, right? So you've got the eye contact and just something pleasurable that you're enjoying that's intimate with each other.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to some of Ken Wilber's talks with David Data on that. And the way a lot of people make love is very similar to just masturbating. It's just about me, really. This isn't about the other person at all. It's just about me getting it off. So from that regard, which is pretty common apparently, I don't know how they measure that data, but apparently it's pretty common. And reflecting on that, I can see how that would happen. Like this just chronic buildup of distraction, fear of intimacy, even with your beloved. And you'd kiss with your eyes closed, and then a lot of people just rush it. Again, very similar to masturbating or something like that. Just like, a minute of bang and go to sleep.
Very transactional.
Very transactional.
Yeah.
And often the other party, so to speak, is left unfulfilled, and then that builds up, and it's a vicious cycle. I think it's more common than what seems sane to me. It seems very insane. And again, just one of these modes of disconnect. And I love to play with it, even like at the shopping center, like really locking in with the checkout person and like having a laugh, having a smile like that. Because very often, it becomes mechanical for them, and no intimacy, no connection for hours straight, just doing. And then you can see it really light them up. Just that eye connection, a smile, a little small talk.
Yeah.
Maybe can't go as deep as like, how are you really? Don't give me that good thing. Give me but those small moments of connection, I really appreciate. At the same time, let's really work on platforms where we can deeply connect.
Yeah. Well, I am doing this little, I don't know if to call it a side project, but it is something I'm interested and passionate in and starting. Yeah, it's a side project. Where I'm interviewing women to understand what it means to be a woman. And part of that has to do with how I grew up. So I grew up, and if you're gay in high school, out or not out, kind of your first support network is usually a group of women, right? And then if you move on to a big city with a thriving gayborhood, you kind of say goodbye to the women usually, and then surround yourself with gay men. And then I came to Perth. I didn't have a tribe of gay men. I found it was women who supported me. And I mean, let's be honest, like if you're a yoga teacher, women are usually your bread and butter, right? They keep the lights on for you. And so, just kind of I'm going through interviewing women and just trying to understand their experience. And one thing I've noticed already is a lack of places to go to emotionally with other people where you can be seen and hold space. So usually, or what I've seen so far, is there's tons of people out there ready to give you advice, but still just, not a lot of people you can go to say, I'm falling apart, right? Just hold me, I'm falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So whether you're a yoga teacher or a woman or both, I think it's just something that's common.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something we could do for each other. I mean, I remember this, like, I think it was last year, there was like 3 celebrities who killed themselves all in a row. Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade, and there might have been a third one. I'm not really sure, but maybe Carrie Fisher.
It's been a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and it- that kind of, I wrote about it a little bit on my blog as well, and just how you need to say more than "Are you okay?" right, and not be satisfied with an answer, because and when you ask someone, be prepared to receive what they say.
Yeah.
Because like I've been there. I've been in some really dark places, and you don't want to open up. You just don't. And if you do, if it is like the stars are aligned and it is a moment where you are ready to reveal your soul to someone and they don't receive it, right? They're rushing off to their next appointment. Chances are you're not going to open up again. You're just going to be more closed and more enveloped. So there's just a huge element of intentionality in the way that we can communicate to each other.
Totally.
Mm.
Back to the yoga teachers.
Yes.
I do think there's an element of, of course, there's a divide that gets created with our mind. But even I think this kind of competitiveness arises, which could be one of the hurdles to that unification of different yoga teachers. Again, even just the time thing. I think a lot of people feel so time poor and so in fight or flight. Even yoga teachers. Yes, people. Yes, listeners. Even yoga teachers. And on top of that, so needing to pay the bills, maybe feeling time poor, needing to get from class to class, and then the kind of competitive thing that creeps into it of kind of wanting to one up others, which is kind of natural to the human ego, this tendency to want to one up everyone else. I think to truly support one another, like that would need to be penetrated as well. This tendency to divide and need to one up everyone. It'd be beautiful, be so beautiful, like to truly support one another and to be truly happy that that other teacher is thriving and successful. And the whole numbers thing, like it can be kind of like cutthroat. Like if you don't have enough people in your class, you don't get rehired, that kind of thing. And like you've been successful and you've had a good flow of numbers and you've got a good reputation, it can be a real grind for a lot of teachers, and it can I think be quite a competition, quite a grind to get in the flow. So even addressing that, I think, will be huge.
Yeah.
To address that is normal. I think people, again, the kind of feeling alone on the path, going from class to class, that kind of attempt to one up everyone else. It can be a huge hurdle in getting us in this kind of level playing field, so to speak, and truly connect and truly support one another.
Yeah.
And like want your fellow yogi, your colleague, to thrive. And to go deep into that is a real it'd be a deep yoga practice to truly go from like ego to soul to loving awareness to true compassion, like really wanting that person to thrive. Because that kind of egoic reaction that a lot of people get, and I can even admit to it, when seeing someone else really succeed, like it can kick in this kind of primal animalistic, like it's very like in our nervous system. Okay, time to one up them. And to even just bring awareness to that, group awareness to that, and truly help each other thrive and rise, huh?
Yeah, I think that would, I know that would shift a lot of things for a lot of people. Because yoga is so beautiful and worthwhile that we need to step away from this model of we're competing for the same number of students. I mean, I don't want to call us, missionaries out there spreading the gospel, but you know what? Maybe they're not going to be at one space. Maybe your tribe of students is going to be somewhere else and it's going to look different. But there are millions of people out there who haven't done yoga yet who would benefit from it. And I'm sure a lot of those, could be part of your tribe. So it's really about expanding people who are interested in this, and instead of competing with each other, right? There's plenty out there. There's plenty of work to be done in this world.
And everyone is truly unique.
Yeah.
Like really finding your true radiant beauty, your gift, your passion for teaching. And it's going to be different to every other teacher if it's truly you, like all the layers of you.
Yeah, that's the hard part. I think that's the $1 million
authenticity.
question.
Yeah.
It's like, who am I as a yoga teacher? Because like everyone who does become a yoga teacher, whatever their path is, they go through all of their identities through their life. Like, I'm a nerd, I'm a jock, I'm a business executive, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a that. And then you get to yoga, hopefully as a student, all of your identities eventually bottom out. And then you're left with nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can slip right back into that identity of being a yoga teacher. And a lot of times for new teachers, I know you talk about teacher training a lot, they're just emulating their teacher for a couple of years, or they're going by whatever model or tradition or whatever teaching techniques were there. And that's fine. It's a good life raft, a good starting point. You got to let it go eventually. And I think the sooner you can do that, the better, because you'll find more joy. And also, it's less likely you'll burn out if you're teaching from a more authentic place.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. The raft. Got to get off it eventually.
Yeah.
And not mistaking the map for the territory keeps coming up in my mind as well. And because a lot of these teacher trainings do give like a script.
Yeah.
And this is how you teach. Don't skew from it. This is how you teach. And yeah, if one hasn't found their groove, their flow, their confidence as well, it could be very easy just to kind of stay on that groove. So there seems to be like a second wave, so to speak, after that initial intro into teaching, where you start to really blossom into your natural state, your authentic style and way of being. And yeah, when you find that groove and that confidence and that natural flow, there's no need to be threatened by any other teacher. And I think that's where the true support can really blossom. And then what I would really love is not only teachers from all different schools of yoga, different methods, different studios merge. That'd be huge. That'd be great.
Merge? What do you mean by that?
To come together into this supportive platform that we're speaking of. To come together.
Yeah.
All the different lineages, all the different schools of yoga to come together every now and then and speak and share and support. And then the different age groups, you could say, or levels of seniority of teaching. So the senior teachers, the in the middle teachers, and then the brand new teachers all coming together. Because even that, there's a divide in that, and we create our own little bubbles of
right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean that even goes back to data points a little bit too, when you were talking about like numbers and what determines whether you get rehired, and that visceral feeling, that limbic feeling of someone being more successful to you. Like I can tell you, I've done this recently, I'll admit, I'm like, who is that yoga teacher? And I click on their Instagram profile, and the first thing my eyes go to is how many followers do they have, as if that is somehow an indication of worthiness.
You're not the only one. I think that is like
Mm.
a default for most people now.
Yeah, yeah. And even kind of like within communities, the way that we will like look at another teacher and say, oh my gosh, she's got tons of people coming. Her retreats are booking out. Like she must have it all figured out. Like she must be together. She's got it together. And we really have no idea if that's true or not. But it is difficult, I think, for someone who has an established career or has some measurement of what you would define as success, to kind of feel pressure to hold it together and still project, I've got it together. And for whatever reason, and that's fine, they might not feel as comfortable letting their guard down in front of, say, a more junior teacher or a less commercially successful teacher. So even unconsciously, we have stratified who we are as yoga teachers, in terms of like who we can be vulnerable with and who we see as peers, when ultimately we're all peers in many ways, probably in most ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Great point.
Mm.
The hierarchy that we bring into everything.
Yeah, it's so natural. I mean, you go to Bali or India, and like one of the first questions they ask you is, are you married? Or how come you're not married? And that's part of them just understanding where you are in the world, where your hierarchy is. Yeah.
So do you see us coming together in the hierarchy of teachers in this context on a truly supportive platform?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, we have more conversations like this.
For sure.
And more time. More time for each other as well. And I think, I don't know if training's the right word, but just more awareness of what it means to truly communicate and to truly witness and to truly see. Because even if we, tell ourselves like, all right, I am going to go spend 2 hours with this person and I'm going to have a deep and meaningful conversation with them. That's a great intention. But if you are racing there and you've just done your marathon of classes and you had a coffee because you taught really late the night before and got up really early and you're feeling really limbic, the capacity for that open-hearted transaction is diminished, or it's harder to access. Yeah, so my ideal situation, I just love being outdoors. It's like, why don't we all just take a huge camping trip or something and close all the yoga studios in Perth for a long weekend, all go out into the woods and just hang out with each other.
Well, that's one of our intentions of Flow, which we're going to emphasize even more this year. Just simplifying, getting off the fucking phone, going beyond our social media thing, going beyond the routine and connecting, flowing, getting in nature. That we're going to really emphasize that this year and simplify it and emphasize that connection.
It's amazing that there's no cell phone reception out there. That's the
well, it's
so
getting
great.
better. It depends on which network you're with. I'm with this small network called Via, which is shifty. You get endless data and endless, like it's got a lot of pros, but shitty reception in a lot of areas. So yeah, it does have reception if you're with like Telstra or Optus apparently, but
turn your phone off anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's so good.
Yeah.
What did I want to get back to on that? Let me just think for a moment. It felt important, but if it doesn't come to me, it's obviously not. No, I think it's gone. I think it is gone.
Into the ether.
Into the ether. I'll let you know if it comes back and we'll like slide it into the end.
Okay.
No, this feels like a really healthy conversation, and I think it'll be really helpful for teachers that think they have got it together. That's what I was going to speak about, the toxic positivity.
Oh boy.
Which is, it runs rampant in yoga teachers. I think we feel a responsibility to be positive all the time. And again, without that permission and support, and even, permission and support to let your hair down and let yourself be negative if you're fucking negative, and let it all out. Let it all out.
I've loved Joe saying she was grumpy the other week.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, yes, own it. You're grumpy. I'm grumpy too.
Yeah, most mornings she wakes up really grumpy. It takes a while to get her energy flowing, but
hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe. We love you.
Love you.
And it's fine. Like, that's Shakti. That's a big part of our human experience. It's the yin with the yang. Like, if we truly want to be balanced, we got to allow for that negativity to be either, again, witnessed, either by ourselves if we're really skillful at witnessing it. But for the most part, it is healthy to have relationships where we can be really authentic with that negativity. We don't always have to be positive.
Yeah, hearing that makes my shoulders just melt a little bit, because it's like, that's what we need. Yeah, I think, there's monetary incentive for teachers to stay positive. I think that's where the beginning of the programming happens. It's like your students come in there, they've had a shit day, they don't want to hear about your shit day. So the teachers who are the most upbeat, they're probably going to get the most students in there. And I don't think that you want to put your students into a state of clinical depression, like from your teaching. But I do, and I did this last week, is I just shared a story about something I had been through, not something I was going through, as a way for me to signal to them, like, I don't have it together. I got lost in the woods, literally, and I was pretty pissed off about it for a little while. So there are ways that we can do that, but amongst each other as peers, as yoga teachers, it's totally encouraged, I think, to say that, like you said, let your hair down and show your soul to each other.
Yeah, I don't think it's encouraged that much yet. On a whole, on a collective.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I think it's happening, but for the most part, this kind of residue from spiritual materialism, this kind of spiritual ego, that's positive all the time and love and light all the time, is still running pretty strong. Yeah.
I've seen it go almost in the other way, in an interesting way, in which a friend and I have called it commoditizing vulnerability.
Okay.
So
speak to that.
Kind of like post Brene Brown, and love her work, love her, totally agree with it. But there's almost this race on social media to see who can be the most vulnerable and exposed yoga teacher.
Yeah. Right.
And they're just like constantly like one-upping about how much they can reveal about themselves, like moment to moment. And like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I don't know, from like, I've actually spent many hours processing this, because my knee-jerk reaction is I just roll my eyes up and I'm like, here we go again. And I guess that's because, I mean, from one perspective, great. Like, you are expressing those emotions and you're giving other people permission to express those emotions as well. But on the other hand, I think the reason I do have a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, feeling to it, is, again, it's just like data points that you're releasing, because who's actually seeing you? There's not a soul connection with those people out there. So in the end, are you serving yourself by putting that out there? Because I think the healing happens when you are witnessed. I mean, also, like, that is it's not a new concept, to be seen, to be witnessed. I mean, that's like the power in support groups, is you go sit in a circle and, hi, my name is Eric, and, I have a relative with quadriplegia, or whatever the case is, and you see each other, right? You share that part. And that's healing. You walk away feeling better.
Yeah. I mean, totally. And I can relate to that knee-jerk reaction. I have that as well. And Joe and I often have a little bit of a giggle about it as well, because it is funny how we can turn anything into that game of one-upmanship. Anything, anything. And it's hard to see. Again, the witnessing thing, if we're not like being like, do you know David Goggins? He's got a whole movement of...
No.
You might resonate with it. Some people either tend to really love his work or hate it. It's very, very popular right now. But he's got a method called the accountability mirror, in which you just look at it and witness. And a lot of people would think of it as intense judgment, but I look at it as witnessing, just taking a good look, a good honest look, witnessing how have I been. So kind of like how we're wanting support groups to really express how we truly are. Doing that to ourselves as well, the accountability mirror.
That's beautiful. That sounds just like meditation to me.
It is. Yeah, so kind of like open-eyed meditation just with ourselves. I
Mm.
think it's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
And just check in regularly. Like, how am I?
That's actually how I start my meditation. How am I right now?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I think this is a great place to wrap it up, actually, just gradually. I think this has been beautiful. It's been beautiful to chat. And yeah, let's keep chatting about this support platform for yoga teachers and anyone out there listening that maybe has been resonating with the conversation, but you're not even a yoga teacher. Maybe you're hearing it on a completely different context. And you're like, shit, yeah, like I need a support network. We can each get proactive in it. And it's happening more and more. These men's groups, these the red tent, so to speak, of women getting together during like menstrual cycle and getting together and like being with that tumultuous experience. Like it's happening. These support groups that aren't just Alcoholics Anonymous or not just drug rehab or not just due to extreme depression, even like
Bottoming out.
Yeah, but just through.
Can we have that conversation before we bottom out?
Before we bottom out and just checking in week to week, day to day. And then there's also the mirror, having a good, loving, hard look in the mirror. How am I? How am I doing? And it's quite huge. And then even, who am I? Like, who am I beyond my roles? I think it's a great little staple to relax, let our shoulders relax from our roles and connect to who we truly are. And that can be a huge remedy as well, which, I mean, it can initially inflame identity crisis. Who the fuck am I?
Right.
But then just to regularly check in, how am I? Who am I? You know, what am I? And just, like what a day. It can just reinvigorate the abundance and beauty in the day.
Sometimes that crisis is such a great thing, though.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the beginning of the unraveling, the cracking open of the seed pod.
Totally. I love you, Eric.
Love you, Stu.
Great to chat with you.
Yeah.
And I'll leave links to your platforms. And again, I'm only just hearing positive, beautiful feedback about what you're offering in Perth. It's so good to have you here. Until next time. Let's do this again.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Much love.